Pete Scazzaro says in his book, The Emotionally Healthy Church, that the longest journey that anyone could ever go on is a journey inward. And that statement, that phrase, it reminded me of a time when my wife and I, we had this desire to grow in our marriage. And so we sought out therapy. And in therapy, we talked about trauma, past hurts, family issues, loss. We talked about a lot of things and a lot of difficult things. What happened to me and my wife is that we started to relive some of the effects of these things. And I began to build anxiety and fear because I wanted to protect us. I wanted to protect my wife and what she would experience. So much so that I couldn't allow my wife, I had a hard time allowing my wife to go to the grocery store by herself. Or even if my wife wanted to go visit her parents who live a few hours away, that if I wasn't driving with her, that I wasn't with her, that I wouldn't want her to go by herself because fear that she could get kidnapped, she could get killed. I fear the worst thing could happen. I was living my life on probability and not possibility. You see, fear was stopping me from experiencing growth and restoration from my past, and it was only sabotaging the most meaningful relationships that I have. And you see, no matter how much money you make, no matter what kind of upbringing you have, we all deal with fear at some form or level. You might ask yourself, have I been making wise choices? What if I'm not good enough? What if no one loves me? What if I don't find somebody to marry? What if I don't get it together in my 20s? Have I done enough that if something were to go wrong, will my family be okay? What's going to happen if things go so bad that I no longer have control? And some of you might be saying like, man, but I'm not scared of anything. I take life as it is, and I'm not scared of anything. And maybe you're not scared, but maybe what you're experiencing is worry. Maybe what you experience is doubt. Maybe you experience anxiety. And I want you to know that the underlying emotion to those things is fear. See, the world says that fear is bad, so you don't feel it. So what happens is that we end up just suppressing our feelings. We end up suppressing our fear. And you know, the world only offers temporary solutions. We respond to fear by running to things that make us feel good. Some of us, we isolate. Some of us, we turn to drugs, to sex. Some of us even turn to porn, whatever addiction, you name it. What we have in common as Christians with non-believers is that we all deal with fear. The difference as Christians, though, is that in the midst of our fear, we have hope and possibilities that we can beyond what we can ever think or even imagine in Jesus. In Matthew chapter 14, we see that Jesus and his disciples are fresh off doing a miracle. They just fed 5,000 people with two fishes and 5 loaves of bread. Crazy work of ministry. And so what we see here is that Jesus is dismissing the crowd while at the same time telling his disciples to go ahead of him on the boat. So Jesus, what he needed to do was to pray. He needed to be by himself. He just needed to rest. And so as hours pass by, the disciples are out on the sea, and what they encounter is a storm. The winds and the waves begin to beat against the disciples. And if you look in verse 25, in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus, he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost." They cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And so Jesus said, "Come." And so Peter got out of the boat and he walked on the water and he came to Jesus. But when Peter saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And as they got back into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." I want you to take note that Peter was only able to do this miracle of walking on water so long as that he kept his eyes on Jesus. When Peter looked at the wind, he began to be troubled and he was fearful and he began to sink. Peter had a lack of faith. And what he was afraid of became bigger than his help and solution in Jesus. What made Peter sink was not was not just gravity and his external background, but what made Peter sink ultimately was his view of Jesus in that very moment. He had a very small view of Jesus. The winds and the waves appeared bigger than who Jesus was, as if the winds and waves did not obey Jesus to begin with. Church, let me tell you that peace is not found in the absence of the storm, but peace is found in the presence of Jesus. See, we all have different levels and forms of fears. You might ask yourself, am I being a good husband? Am I being a good wife? My kids are off the rails. Am I being a good parent? Or even as a student, am I going to get into the school that I want? Am I going to be doing the career that I want? How am I going to pay the bills next month? What's going to happen if I lose my job or if I lose stability? Maybe if I could just see the future, then I could have peace, right? Because I would know what would happen next. But in reality, we know that's not how life works. Peace is not found in the absence of storms, church, but peace is found in the presence of Jesus. You see, Jesus didn't calm the storm, but rather he invited Peter into it. And Peter's rebuke of having little faith was because he took his eyes off of Jesus and he was instead focused on the storm. I mean, Peter, check this out. Peter was literally walking on water, but he was looking at the wind. See, life isn't always supposed to be smooth and calm. But when we take our eyes off of Jesus, we see that the storms of life can quickly overcome us. We quickly sink. We get sucked into temptations and we get overwhelmed by life. And we forget who holds our life, and that's God. You see, life is full of storms, big or small, and I tell you, you can endure and you can make it through if you keep your eyes on Jesus and what he's done in your life. See, the story is less about Peter's faith or lack of, but it was more about the power of Jesus. And in the same way that the disciples responded to Jesus, that we too should respond in worship of who he is. See, Peter did have little faith, but I want to tell you that even in his little faith, Peter knew who to call out to in his time of crisis, and he called upon Jesus. And Jesus was right there, quick to pull him out of the water, and church, Christ will do the same for you. So in your moments of doubt, in your moments of fear, you can call upon the name of Christ, and he will come and answer. So I encourage you to fix your eyes on Christ. And if there's anything that you can get out of my sermon today, it's this point, is that fear turns into peace in the presence of Jesus. My name is Mark Boleno. Thanks for listening to my short sermon.
Boom. Dude, that was fire.
He came for the one take.
Golly.
He said, I'm not afraid of will ye.
Dude, that was great.
I don't want another